Good evening to each one. It's 7 o'clock. It's time for our Bible study. We are studying Parenting God's Way, and we just began this new study at the beginning of the month. And we are in lesson 2. We covered the first 4 questions last week on fulfilling our family role. And so after just kind of a brief review after our prayer, we'll pick up with question 5. That's where, again, we left off, question 5. If you want to have your Bibles open to Proverbs 31, that would be good. Proverbs chapter 31. Parenting God's Way in lesson 2, fulfilling our family role. Just want to hit this real quick. This is from J.J. Turner's book, Parents Wake Up. Good reminder. Surprise, parenting is not about the children, it's about the parents. This is why we call it parenting, not childrening. Parents need to be in control of self before they are able to control their children. Parents need to lead self in a cool, calm, and collected way before they can lead their children. Parents are responsible for how they parent their children. It is not the children's responsibility. Furthermore, he says parenting is a learned skill, not luck. Parenting is a responsibility given by God. Parenting responsibilities cannot be transferred. Parenting is hard work. It's 24/7, 365 days a year. And parenting must be intentional to be successful. Like all those points, and I really like this last point, it must be intentional to be successful. And so we began with our focus on what's the role that God has given to fathers in the home. And we're not going to reteach that, but provide for the home. These 2 passages, remember, talk about, and fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath. Then this one, Colossians 3:21, do not provoke your children. Fathers, do not provoke your children, and it speaks of discouraging them. And so we talked about from an article written by Darrell Himmel, a member of the Lord's Church, a gospel preacher, 10 ways to frustrate your children, make unreasonable demands by not expecting enough, by harsh and cruel emotional treatment, inconsistent discipline, undisciplined parents, by not being united in discipline, by not making the punishment fit the crime, show favoritism, overindulgence, by suppressing and overprotecting. And of course, we spent time on each of those points with his comments that went with those main 10 points, but we're not going to have time to do that tonight. And then we talked, of course, about the father's role that God has given them in the discipline, the training of their children. And we're going to have an entire lesson devoted to that, so we're going to move on from that point and pick up with now mothers. And that brings us to question 5. Anyone need a question sheet? Raise your hand if you do, and we'll make sure one gets brought to you. Does everyone have one? Okay, don't see any hands. So, Proverbs chapter 31. Proverbs chapter 31. So, if you look at verse 1, I'm getting up here because I had some notes in my PowerPoint here that I can see. Proverbs 31, verses 10 through 31, speaks of the virtuous wife. I'm reading from the New King James Version at the moment. And the question is, who can find a virtuous wife? For her worth is far above rubies. And I have a marginal note that says, literally a wife of valor in the sense of all forms of excellence. The New American Standard Bible, 1995, reads in verse 10 of Proverbs 31, an excellent wife who can find, for her worth is far above jewels. The ESV reads, an excellent wife who can find, she is far more precious than jewels. And then after you read the text, you know exactly why such a godly woman is valued so much. Verse 30 Proverbs 31 says, charm is deceitful and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Well, that's the kind of woman that's being described here by the wise man. It's a woman who fears the Lord. And you see that in everything that is said about her. And so, based on that, question 5, what does the woman who fears the Lord, what does she do for her household? What does she do for her family? What is said? Kim?
Well, it says that she provides food, clothing. She does not eat the bread of idleness. She makes sure her family is taken care of.
All right. You pretty much covered it. So, in verse 15, it says she rises while it is night and provides food for her household, even a portion for the maidservants, in addition to her immediate family. She doesn't fear cold weather. She doesn't fear when the season turns to winter because she's made preparations. She's made sure that her family is properly clothed with warm clothing and protection for that time of year. And so that is in verse 21. In verse 27, it says she does what? She watches over the way of her household, right? And does not eat the bread of idleness. What does that mean? She doesn't eat the bread of idleness. Not even close, right? She's not lazy. You read Proverbs 31, verses 10 through 31, you're definitely not going to come away with, well, this is a woman that sits around and watches soap operas all day. This is a woman who's just on the phone all day, just talking with her girlfriends. This is a woman that just, doesn't do anything. No, this is a woman who's devoted to her family and watching over the ways of her household as it pertains to her husband, as it pertains to their children. And it's not that she's, doors closed and locked and she doesn't go out. She goes out and she's very industrious, period, right, in what she does. But again, this is a woman who's described as her worth is far above rubies. She is a virtuous or excellent wife, and her value far exceeds any jewels. And she's a woman who fears the Lord. And so, her children will rise up and call her blessed. Verse 28, her husband also, and he praises her. Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. What a text, right? Comments? Go ahead, Tom.
It's not something that happens by accident. She, like you said, she's industrious. She's purposeful in her heart to deliver those things that she's supposed to do. And yet, I think sometimes people read this text and think that's unattainable. It wouldn't be written if it was unattainable. It's a target for us to shoot for, both as men as we're selecting our wives to be, and for women as they're desiring to serve God the way He intends for them to serve as a mom and wife.
It's kind of like parenting. It's not luck; it's intentional. You have to be purposeful, as you said, to develop into this kind of godly woman with these characteristics that God is pleased with. Just like I know it's a high bar. Husbands, love your wives as Christ also loved the church, but we're instructed to do that. There's the perfect standard. We're always pressing towards that goal to have that kind of love and devotion and sacrificial love for our spouse. Kind of like sometimes qualifications of elders get brought up. Well, man, no wonder we don't have elders. That's just so far out of reach or unattainable. No, it's not. No, it's not. They appointed elders in every church, Acts 14:23, and most of those qualifications, every single Christian is called upon to have in his or her life, with few exceptions, okay? So, yeah, it's a high bar, but that's the bar that a godly woman strives to to have and be, and a high bar for men or husbands. Well, that's the bar we need to continue to strive to be. Go ahead, Norma.
Help to think of the word contribution here, where she's consistently doing positive things to contribute to the success of this family as God would have it be successful. And in every verse, it's focused outward towards getting a result for the family in some positive way. And you think about teamwork, and the family is a team. The leadership's there, but everybody's contributing.
Right. So, do you come away that this woman is self-centered, selfish? Yes, the opposite, right? She's focused on everyone in the home and the family. Just like the husband, the father needs to be focused outwardly, not inwardly, but upon his wife, upon his children. And certainly we see that with the woman described here. Other thoughts or comments? Shirley and then Bonnie?
I may be wrong on this, but I think even after they're out of the house, you're still looking out for their well-being.
Well, you're still a mother, right? You don't stop being a mom. You still want what's best for them spiritually, looking out for their well-being. We talked about one of those things, I think Jeff maybe brought it up in our list, of the importance of the Bible teaching of leaving and cleaving. There's a new family that's begun here. We have to be very careful as the older parents not putting ourselves into the lives of our parents too much. But no, I mean, you're still a father, still a mother. You still want what is best, obviously, for your children. You still want to impact their lives any positive, godly way that you can, right? Still want to be a good influence for them in any way you can. Bonnie?
Thinking about, like, obviously this whole study is about raising children, and one of the things that I notice is some people are so uncertain, like, I don't know what's going to happen when, my kid gets to be a teenager, or this and that. But it says in this passage that she smiles at the future, and I think that indicates that that's verse 25, and I think that indicates that she has confidence, in what she's done to prepare her children for the future. I mean, physically, but also spiritually as well. I think you could, draw that conclusion too. And so it's so important to start so young so that you can have that confidence. You can smile at the future because you've done everything you possibly could to prepare them for that.
Is that the American Standard Bible?
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
The old version.
1995.
Okay.
No, it's the older one.
The older one?
Yeah, it's older than that.
But it's in the name. Okay. So that's verse 25. Bonnie was making comments using that kind of as a springboard. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come, as the New King James Version, the New American Standard Bible says, what again? She smiles at the future. I like that, and it's a great point that Bonnie began her comments by saying, some parents saying, well, I don't know how it's going to turn out, or how they're going to be as teenagers, and well, obviously, I guess, we don't have a crystal ball, but godly parents, it's every day. We're working, hopefully, towards the goal of bringing them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. Train a child in the way he should go, and when he's older, right? Lord willing, he's not going to depart. She's not going to depart from the way that you have been training them in. So it's a really neat statement, or verse there, how she'll rejoice in time to come, or she'll smile with the future, because of all the work and preparation and the fruit of that, right? The fruit of that. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11 speaks of that, and that's, I think, maybe the last verse we read a week ago, and that's in the context of the Lord's chastening and discipline, and then the parents' chastening of their children, how it seems to, no chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. In other words, down the road in the future, you start seeing, okay, there's the fruits from all those efforts and those challenging days and times that we went through, all that hard work, it's paying off. And I think that's a similar thought being stated there. Go ahead, Sam.
Verse 16, the earnings, I mean, those are synonymous with wages. What are they?
Yeah, she considers a field and buys it. From her profits, she plants a field, or a vineyard, excuse me. So let's say the fruit of her hands, from the fruit of her hands or profit, she plants a vineyard. Your question was what again?
The word earnings or profits, are those wages that she's working for? Can that be determined?
Well, earlier it speaks of how, in verse 13, she seeks wool and flax, willingly works with her hands, like the merchant ships, she brings her food from afar. She considers a field and buys it. Again, speaking of her industriousness, her work ethic, always busy, and we can think of examples today of women making things, selling things, and she's doing that as well, it seems. Other comments on that? Erica, Brandon?
She makes linen garments and sells them.
Yeah.
Along with his point. Verse 18 also, her lamp does not go out at night. So
yeah. So verse 24, Brandon pointed out, she makes linen garments and sells them, supplies sashes for the merchants. So that's a good connecting verse. Erica, did you have that or something else? Sorry? I don't know. Did he steal your thunder? Ladies first. All right. Anyone else? Okay, there's a whole lot more we could say about this, but we better move on. Let's go to 1 Timothy 5:14 and also Titus 2:4-5, some similar teachings in these passages regarding wives and mothers and roles and responsibilities in the home. And again, as we're going through this, the lesson, again, lesson 2, entitled Fulfilling Our Family Role. I want us to be looking inwardly. Am I fulfilling my family role as the husband, as the father, or as the wife, as the mother? And of course, we want to emphasize that to our children too, because as we'll get to, they have God-given roles as well that have been assigned to them. So 1 Timothy 5:14, Shirley, can you read that for us? And go ahead.
Therefore I desire that the younger women marry, bear children, manage the house, give no opportunity to the adversary to speak for false provision.
Okay, Ray, can you get Titus 2? Verses 4 and 5, please.
That they admonish the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, homemakers, good, obedient to their own husband, that the word of God may not be blasphemed.
Okay. So, considering what's said here by the Apostle Paul in these passages, what are mothers instructed to do? Back in 1 Timothy 5:14, he says, marry and then bear children, manage the house, right? Give no opportunity to the adversary, the enemy, to speak reproachfully. In the passage that Brother Ray just read from Titus 2, verses 4-5, the older women are to admonish, instruct the younger women to love their husbands, love their children, to be discreet, chaste, homemakers, good, obedient to their husbands, that God's word may not be blasphemed. With that in mind, letter A under question 6, what does it mean for a woman to manage the house and also to be homemakers? manage the house and to be a homemaker. Okay, Norm?
My first thought on that was the idea of creating an environment where you make it possible for you to reach the goals that God would have for the family. So it's the mood. She's the mood maker, the creator of that environment where things can grow.
Okay. So very key, and the wife and mother, very key role in creating the environment, Norm is saying, for the things of the will of God to be carried out. Of course, first and foremost, I want to emphasize again, the spiritual leader of the home must take the lead to ensure those things are happening, but we cannot exaggerate, I don't think, how important the role of the wife and mother is to the success to the home, can we? And so, that word, the phrase manage the house literally means house ruler. And that might in some ways, or to some, may not sit well, because, I thought the husband was supposed to rule or be the head. Well, he is. But God has given her this role to manage the house, be the house ruler. God unquestionably planned for the woman to take charge of the house. The workers, homemakers, also some versions translate it workers at home, while man is to work by the sweat of his face to provide for the family. Genesis 3:19, going back to the beginning, his wife is to be his helper by working in the home. All right, go ahead, Francis.
She's to use the money wisely while taking care of the physical needs of the home. So if she's not working, she's to take the money that her husband has worked out and not spend it frivolously. She's going to take care of that, and they're going to save together to make sure that when a need arises, they have something to fall back on. And she's to teach and show God in the home.
Okay, very good. So whether it's the finances and the use of the money and the wisdom there, and we talked about that somewhat when we were talking about husbands and wives in that first lesson, godly marriages, you got to start there to have godly parenting, right? And we talked about what are some strengths of a godly marriage, what are some weaknesses, and money is a big one. Being on the same page, that communication, and the second thing you said, repeat that please, Francis.
To teach and show God in the home.
Yeah, to teach and to show God in the home, which we're going to emphasize that a little bit more coming up with question 7. All right, anyone else? Go ahead, Robert.
I read Proverbs 31 as giving the wife and mother the role of in charge of logistics. And that's separation from the father and husband, the leader of the team, and the wife is in charge of running the home, or what we call logistics of the business. Another comment too about the wife's role is, I believe that she should make the home a place where people want to be. Yeah, that's okay. A peaceful, warm, loving home. Yeah.
All right, so how often do us men say, well, I have to check with my wife, right? Logistics. But also, great second point as well, making the home a place where the family wants to be, but others also want to be. Norme.
She has such a critical role in setting that mood of the environment of the home so that it can work successfully, because she's in the role, the very powerful role of the submissive role that's there. And that how well she does that, which is tricky, is going to determine the temperature, whether things are getting really hot or whether things are nice and calm and smooth. And the husband, of course, the leadership is the other piece of that, but she's got the thermometer turner.
Right. Norm P.
Yeah, the difference between the two roles, and that it's not hard just looking at how men in general act and react to various given situations. We are very outward focused. Therefore, being a provider, being a protector, that's natural to us, because if something happens, we automatically look outside, put what we desire behind us, and we are the shield in front. But a woman will 9 times out of 10 look at the object of what's at issue and manage what's there. And the two together work beautifully hand in hand. If you see a child screaming on the side of the road, 9 times out of 10, a guy's gonna be up there, gonna look at the child and look around to see if there's something that upset the child. Whereas a woman will go up there and pick up the child and try to calm the child. Immediately, look at the child and see what's wrong with it. And the difference in focus and the ability of a woman to see that.
Yeah.
Whereas a man will stop and look around, is there any other threats? Not that he doesn't care about the child, not that the woman doesn't care about outside threats, but the way we seem to be orchestrated and how we first focus on the various tasks.
Right.
So why would she be a manager home? Because she can look inwardly and see the things that a man's gonna miss.
Okay, appreciate that. Todd?
There's a contrast in Proverbs 31 when it talks about the husband. It says, her husband is known in the gate when he sits among the elders of the land. So you have the woman at home and the man out among the people.
Right.
And I have a question in my mind about how this translates as society changes, right? We don't have to go to the gate to get things done anymore. We don't even have to go to the grocery store because you can have it all shipped to the house, right? So even, men working from home, right? So roles have, the ways, we're not in this agrarian society anymore. And so these examples of her buying a field or making things at home, they all change. It kind of maybe leads into your part B question,
Yeah,
right? On how we answer that question. So.
Did you have more?
No. Proceed.
I was hoping the bell would ring before I got to that. Why'd I ask a controversial question? But no, now we're going to get in it. Go ahead, Tom. Yeah.
The point is that these are expectations. This is not something that's debatable. It's not something that we can shirk and say that's somebody else's responsibility, or we can shift roles or anything like that. This is very descriptive of what each partner's role is in marriage, and neither can walk away from those responsibilities.
That's right. And time passing and culture changing doesn't change God's divine will, and I know that's not your point, but things may not match up exactly with what we see in different culture. As you said, men, the gates, but I don't think they were just hanging out in the gate and talking. They were working, but they were out, and as we said, the woman's managing the house, but she's also out too some. But these divine roles haven't changed in almost 2,000 years, have they? For the world maybe, but not for children of God. All right, y'all want to get to the fun one? No, not yet? Okay, go ahead, Brandon.
I thought it was interesting how in verse 1 it says the words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother taught him. And so even then you can see that his mother was teaching him how to find an excellent wife.
Listen to mama. At least the godly mothers. And so Brandon was just pointing out at the beginning of the chapter, the words of King Lemuel, the utterance which his mother taught him. Yeah, he had a good mom. Yeah, okay. Many of us have been blessed with good mothers. Okay, so I don't want to get to that yet. Question B, is it wrong for a mother to work outside of the home? Why or why not? Okay. Now, brethren are going to come down in certain places differently on this. I'll share some thoughts, but I'll get your all's take first. Go ahead, Chris.
I don't think, I want to say no in the sense that for my girls, I want them to get an education. I want to push them towards jobs that are conducive for them to work, to be in the home. I mean, I would want them to I went to college to get to get an education, but I always wanted to be a wife and mom. Like I knew that was the first thing I wanted to do. I wanted to be married, and I wanted to be at home with my kids. And I was very, very blessed to be able to do that. Obviously, there are instances where that may not be possible, or something happens to your spouse. So in the sense for my girls, I want them to want to be wives and mothers and manage the home, because I agree with Tom, like, there's no getting around it. That is the role that they are to fulfill. But I want them to be prepared in case life doesn't go as planned. So teaching or nursing or something that allows you to still be there for your kids, but could also support if need be.
Okay. All right. Appreciate those good thoughts. Ready to chime in, but I'm not going to just yet. But if we start losing too much time, I'm going to take the time back. Okay, that's just a warning. Erica, go ahead.
Hills of that, you see scripturally that whether you're talking about the Proverbs 31 woman, talking about Lydia comes to mind. I think one of the big things that stands out with the Proverbs 31 woman is she had maidservants. In our day and age, in our culture, for American civilization, we are so set on this thing of complete independence. We have to do it all ourselves. We have to manage our house by ourselves. We cannot have help in any form. I think we get caught up in that culture. But this woman, you see and read that she first took care of her family, even if that meant getting up in the middle of the night to provide for her family. She was not lazy day or night. But she also, like y'all said a while ago, she was very industrious. She also used the skills that God gave her to help further the support of her family. But you do not see her shirking in any way on her responsibilities at home. For us, we enjoy, and I do very much, myself being home. But if the need arises, it would not be sinful scripturally to say I need to help support my family.
Okay. All right. Real good comments, both of you. Let me get to mine and something on the screen. If we have any more time for comments in the class, I'll come back to the class. But again, the question is it wrong for a mother to work outside of the home? Why or why not? I don't think it's a simple yes or no. I think it's a lot involved to unpack here. My first question is it a necessity for the family's needs to be met for her to go out and work? Are the needs being met? If not, then maybe is a necessity then. Has the husband passed away? Or maybe the husband hasn't passed away, but is the man unable to work and provide? Now that happened in my own home. When I was 10 years old, my father had a massive heart attack. Guess what? He couldn't do full-time work or preaching anymore. So my mother, who didn't have a college degree, which ties into Carissa's point, had to go into a factory, and it wasn't a nice environment. It wasn't an easy place to work, but she did it, and she had to do it, and was willing to do it, to help provide for the needs of our family. But I can tell you what her preference would have been. For Dad not to have had the heart attack and Dad still supporting, and she didn't have to go into Country Oven Bakery in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and work 25 years to do that. So there may be a necessity why that has to take place. And I remember her telling my sisters, her daughters, 3 of them, the importance of getting your college degree. So if something did happen to your spouse, you don't have to go work in a factory. Hopefully you can go do this or go do that. So they got degrees. Jenny, for example, got one in nursing. Maybe briefly used it, but she's been able to stay at home because of her husband's job and his income. And so that's been a blessing. What else? Let's see. And in doing so, if she's working outside the home, is she failing to meet her God-given responsibilities of being a homemaker and managing her house? Again, God-given responsibilities. Is that being neglected? But there's a very good reason why God has given this great and awesome responsibility and honor to wives and mothers. From L.A. Stouffer's book, Family Life, A Biblical Perspective, Keepers at Home, he said Lemuel, going back to Proverbs 31, depicts the worthy woman as a dedicated domestic. She arises early to prepare meals for the family. She spins yarn that is woven into carpets and cloth for garments, and she looketh well to the ways of her household. No work is more important or central to the health of family relations than the work God assigned woman in the home. Love is imparted in the direct and personal giving of woman in the midst of the household. Security is derived from the stability of her daily presence there, and training is permitted by the quantity of time she can offer. Ask any child who is greeted with a kiss from mama and a jar of fresh-baked cookies when he arrives home from school. Ask any husband who greets his wife with a peck on the lips amidst the aroma of tasty home cooking. Ask either of them about love, security, warmth, about what really matters and has real worth to a family. Why would anyone label this work menial or demeaning? A wife in the home is a co-partner with her husband in family life. What she provides in the home is as significant as what he provides from outside the home. Both are giving themselves to God-ordained roles, and neither should be ashamed. No woman need feel ashamed, inferior, subhuman, or second class for taking seriously the wholesome task in the home, labors of love around which the family is unified and bonded together. Okay, got a few seconds. Comments or questions as we wrap it up. Jason?
Anything around the women, I'd like for the women to be able to talk, but I will say, you cannot go get a job as a woman and still be shirking your responsibilities at home. So the point is, you have a responsibility at home, and that responsibility has to be fulfilled, regardless of if you're working outside the home or not. And if that's not being fulfilled, that's a parenting problem.
Okay. Amen. All right, second bell is rung. I think it was announced, but thankfully I get 2 quarters instead of 1. And so we'll pick up with question 8. Lesson 3, though, I'd go ahead and pick it up. It's in the back, so pick up lesson 3, if you will, and that'll be emailed out as well. And thank you for your good comments tonight.